To the stage, Rich Baich, Yotam, Segev, and great job, Ed and Gary again, talking about data security.
Rich, thank you for having Cyera and myself here. We're very, very proud to be here on the main stage at the AT&T Secure Connections Conference. And we're proud to be partners with you, your team, and AT&T. I started Cyera because CISOs across the country and across the globe were telling us time and time again that at a time where they're required to have more control, better control over their enterprise's data than ever before, that challenge has actually become harder than it ever was. The insane growth of data, if you think about it, a floppy disk was the best way to move data from place to place not so long ago. I'm a pretty young guy, and that was still my best method for doing that. The insane amounts of data we're seeing today, the move to the hybrid enterprise, the hybrid cloud, and the fact that data now resides outside of the enterprise four walls in IaaS, in SaaS, in DB as a service, and of course the challenge of controlling access to data when there's so much of it and so many people in the organization. How are you thinking about the enterprise data in your position, Rich?
Well, you know, Yotam, I can't start this formal discussion until I tell a little bit of a story. So, for all you vendors out there, here's one of those. There's no way this happened. So, you know, when Yotam was here working, coming to visit us for meetings, and he's like, I really want to get some time on your calendar, and my calendar was pretty heavy. So I tried to use that card, and I said, look, I have 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. at the gym open. Be glad to see you there. And he showed up. So let's give him a round of applause.
I was mostly concerned that after you see how much I'm not in shape, you won't be open to doing business. But
so, you know, how do we think about enterprise data? When I think of data, I think of it as a life cycle and how critical it is to have visibility, controls, and transparency around that data so that we can make decisions based on facts and the truth. As we see that as one of the most critical components that we need to make. In this field of cybersecurity, it is about getting to truth, putting that truth into a medium so that the appropriate individuals, risk managers, business managers, as well as technology risk professionals can help determine what actions need to be taken.
And I think it's also a good time to remember that before we called it cybersecurity, we used to call it information security. It's a good time to remember that that was the main asset we were trying to protect when we started down this road. But let's talk further about visibility to data, transparency to data. Why is it so important?
Well, we talk about DSPM, right, which is Data Security Posture Management, is core to providing this visibility, transparency, and control around our data. When you do this and you think about the posturing, it's about creating inventories of data across the enterprise automatically. One of DSPM's first principles lays out a foundation for data security program by fully automating the data and the discovery and classification process across our clouds, our SaaS, and on-prem data stores. It allows us to inventory and account for data we generate and collect. Our focus on security efforts on that data is what matters the most. DSPM allows us to identify gaps in our controls around data, encryption, resistance, access, and principles that are either in place today or that are forthcoming beyond our current visibility. DSPM allows us to drive remediation and constantly improve our security posture by shoring up our defenses wherever sensitive data might be exposed inappropriately. It's about ensuring the controls are actually working. But Yotam, let me ask you, how do you feel AI is changing landscape of risk management for today's enterprises?
So I think in my position, I get to talk to a lot of CISOs and security teams across the country and hear about their challenges and about the opportunities they're facing today. And AI is a dual-sided sword, right? I think we spoke about it quite a bit today, but on the one hand, there's a huge opportunity in order to harness the power of AI to accelerate our security efforts, to accelerate security operations, to become much more contextualized in the way we investigate incidents and respond to incidents. But on the other hand, there's a huge risk. Hasty adoption, irresponsible adoption, and even lack of adoption could put enterprises at business risk, because the world is definitely moving to that, and we got the opportunity to be impressed with Gary and his capabilities. I think as far as we're concerned at Cyera, we're seeing AI put a huge focus on data. For many organizations, if you think about AI, it runs on two things. It runs on GPUs. NVIDIA is the primary GPU manufacturer, and we're all seeing how well they're doing in the stock market. The other asset that AI is running on is data. And for enterprises, for many, many years, data security was not exactly a solved problem. We tried to do DLP. We tried to keep the data within the four walls. And in this new reality of the hybrid cloud, data is in many, many places. And we have to approach this problem of data security with a new mindset. And that's exactly where DSPM comes in and starts by doing something that is so fundamental in every one of our programs in the cybersecurity profession, which is inventory. What is it that we're trying to protect?
Right.
Where are the things that matter the most? So we're here with an amazing audience of cybersecurity professionals and experts. Why do you feel like they should care about data within their enterprises and worry about its security specifically?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, one of the most valuable commodities that exists today is the data, right? We've built a infrastructure that requires just the right time of data to so many different business applications, regardless of your industry, whether that's healthcare, whether that's financial, whether that's retail, all of those run on the criticality of data arriving and being truthful so that they can obviously perform those functions associated with their business. And then all these entities obviously have and store data. And we all want to obviously protect that data, based on regulatory as well as, customer, promises to protect that data from a privacy standpoint. So when we think about the life cycle of data is about providing that assurance that the environments that you're using to inventory, protect, and access all have appropriate controls. And one of the best ways to do that is through posture reporting and posture management to understand that so that you can drive those things. It's
You gave the example of you put the focus on data lifecycle management. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a story a metaphor I always like to give. All people, every person I know, we all like to hoard a little too much, mm-hmm. right? And we have garages in our houses. Those garages are physical. They have four walls. And there's a limit to how much we can pile up in those garages. At some point, they get full. I've seen people who built a second garage because the first one got full, but it's quite a hassle. When you think about the move to cloud, and you think about what the cloud has allowed us to do, the garage is now completely extensible, right? Like there's no longer a physical limit on how much data we can collect in our organizations. When are we forced to delete it because there's no more space? That problem doesn't exist anymore, and that was a very real problem in the on-premise world, in the data center. The racks would get full. And I think that this puts a huge focus on data lifecycle management, as you said, and the need to start putting in place operational programs to actually cleanse the data, remove the data. Otherwise, we're going to be finding ourselves sitting on stockpiles and stockpiles of information that we don't really know what its value is and what we need to do to clean it up.
Well, I think I have an idea for your next T-shirt. You could be the anti-data hoarders.
Take that to marketing. We'll see if they go with it.
I mean, look, there's TV shows out there for hoarders, right? So I think I'm patenting that right here live, just so you're sure. Listen, the idea is that just this approach is DSPM versus traditional DLP. can we make it achievable for the largest enterprise and the smaller ones as well? And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we're focused and providing that data transparency. I probably say this in every briefing, but it still remains the same. And let me know if this aligns with what you think Cyera does. Know it, get it, use it. You need to know what data that you need to get to utilize. You have to get it in a rapid fashion with fast refresh rates, and then ultimately put it in the hands in a reporting format so that someone can take action associated with the data.
I absolutely agree, and I think that's also where DSPM and DLP come together, right? I think DLP was a way for us to close down the network when we still had a network perimeter that was very clear. And DSPM is a complementary capability that allows us to do DLP better, and also to take on new efforts that weren't really possible or weren't really needed in the old world, like identifying data vulnerabilities before they materialize and remediating them across the enterprise.
Great.
So we've got a few questions from the crowd.
Okay.
Take a few. For organizations looking to implement DSPM, how would you recommend you start?
Rich? Okay, I'll start. I think for many organizations that I'm in discussions with over the past few years, one of the narratives that I hear about the most is that they don't have a data governance, data security policy in place. And many organizations think about the world policy first, and then you start to take action. I think that it's very, very, very challenging to build a data governance policy or a data security policy without the facts, without the information that Rich talked about, without knowing how much data we have, what data we have, where does that data reside. And I think that in order to build an effective data governance, data security policy today, you have to marry the two together. You have to do it in a side-by-side parallel manner. Build the policy alongside the discovery and classification of your assets, the identification of the value of the assets, because only with that information are you able to build a policy that really corresponds to your business and what really matters to your organization.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to perform data risk management if you don't have an inventory. Because how can you understand your risk if you can't assure that you know the inventory and the type and where it exists today?
Yeah. I think another point that is very interesting in today's world, traditionally when we thought about data security, DLP, we focused primarily on the unstructured space, what at the end of the day the average employee in the enterprise was handling. Documents, files, file shares, Office 365, and those types of unstructured data ecosystems. Today, with the advent of SaaS and with the advent of the data lakehouses, there's so many other platforms in which huge quantities of sensitive information reside and are being handled in all different ways by human identities and non-human identities. And I think that the need to expand data protection further than just the unstructured data landscape is extremely, extremely dire today.
So another question from the crowd. I think we have some university students out there today. If they wanted to get into DSPM, what skill sets would you recommend that they learn, or where could they focus their attention?
So I think first and foremost, having a holistic view and understanding of information security principles is important, because what DSPM is today may not be the same thing DSPM is in 2 years. As the products and the industry and the market changes, it can sprawl, and basically all the same disciplines that we applied in we'll call it a traditional infrastructure. Now that we have a cloud infrastructure, the same risks will exist. They've just been transformed to a potential operational environment. So don't stop with doing good foundational information and cybersecurity skills. And then from there, obviously, working with any of the DSPM products are good to get a greater understanding of what you're doing, and understanding and utilizing DLP products are also a good, well-rounded skill set. Anything to add?
Yeah, and I think you're spot on, and this is a call to action for the product developers amongst us and the vendors amongst us. I think that the days where people spend 3 or 5 years building expertise in operating a specific enterprise product, I think those days are quickly fading away. And products like ours in the enterprise security space have to be much more intuitive, much more accessible to the different analysts, engineers, practitioners that are leveraging it. It has to be easier to go and get value from these products. And this is one of the things that we focus on the most in our product development and the work we're doing. Make it intuitive, make it easy, make it accessible for people to learn quickly and really be able to leverage the full value that it has to offer.
So Rich, the next question is tailored to you, and then it'll be tailored to you, Yotam, as well. So without giving away too much information, Rich, what scale of data is AT&T dealing with?
Well, that's a very personal question. I'm gonna answer it from use your imagination. 1/3 of the world's data runs across our core network.
Wow. And then Yotam, what are you seeing in the industry? What scales are you seeing out there that customers are dealing with?
Yeah, so I think hundreds of petabytes of data today are something that many enterprises have. Even smaller organizations that are data-centric leverage data as a core business can sometimes see those quantities of data. And the pace of growth is actually quite immense. We're seeing organizations that are growing over 50% year over year in terms of their data landscape. And a big part of that, in my mind, has to do with that extendable garage phenomena we spoke about. And the other side is that there aren't really many operational data lifecycle management programs in place for organizations. One of the things that's helping us fight back on that is that the cloud bill is growing proportionately. So organizations are starting to feel it in their pocket. They're starting to feel that this, let's call it a gently reckless accumulation of data has a very tangible dollar cost associated with it. And that's driving organizations to really take action and start doing something that none of us really liked doing before, which is archiving and deleting data that is not in use.
I mean, if we're cleaning it in the front end with dynamic defense and you're cleaning it in the back end,
might be clean at the end.
Might be pretty clean.
So staying on the garage theme, so how do you go from inventory, right, so building it the right way, to maintenance? How do you keep it the right way down the road to where you don't end up in this situation again?
Yeah, so I think there's a few aspects of that. The first aspect that I would bring to the forefront is this whole, let's call it infrastructure as code theme that most big enterprises subscribe to ideologically, but in practice, the cloud is probably about half and half for most organizations that we've encountered. There's a lot of Wild West cloud, which is cloud that has been spun up manually, and there's a lot of things sitting around there that nobody can really account for. And I think that that's actually the underlying challenge here, is are we going to really adopt infrastructure as code and as a mandate that's going to become 99% of our infrastructure, or we're going to continue to allow this manual adoption of cloud, manual use of cloud, because that makes a huge difference in what the workflows look like in order to create a, let's call it a high hygiene cloud in terms of data and in other aspects as well. The other aspect is that I think when we look at security and data security specifically, traditionally we created quite a bit of friction with the business. And that didn't necessarily serve us very well. Right? Like the moment somebody's trying to do their job and you block an action that they're trying to do, things cascade from there and are not always that positive. And I think that being able to identify that in real time, alert about it, and take remediative action is sometimes even better than being able to block it. Right? Like unless it's really something that is horrid, you might prefer to let it happen and be able to manage it in the minutes that follow, rather than prevent it, block it in the first place, in the odd chance that you're preventing somebody from doing their job and driving the business forward.
So rolls directly in the next question. So talk about your success rates or things you've seen where you've helped people get past that, right? So you've delineated the data out, you've controlled it, now you want to enable the business. What have you seen to be able to do that?
So I'll take it even a step further than that, and I'll talk about some of the business challenges that are really interesting around data that we're seeing today with our customer base. One example is how long it takes to provision access to data for the different data constituents, data scientists within the organization. Some organizations today have tens of thousands of data scientists, and if they're a regulated entity, it's specifically heavily regulated entity, it might take as long as 6 months on average to get access to data. You think about those time frames, that's a lot of wasted time. That's a lot of time where people aren't driving innovation and driving product forward. And if we can use this data visibility and the posture analysis of the data to shorten that time period to a month or a week or hopefully one day, a few minutes, that has immense business value for those organizations. Another example has to do with data sharing between different businesses. So, many enterprises share very sensitive information with their partners, and they want to hold them accountable. How do you show that you're taking good care of your partner's data? How do you attest that you know where that data resides and who can access it? And how do you hold each other accountable to that? We've seen organizations that have lost significant contracts, 9-figure contracts with their business partners because they failed those type of audits. And that's an area where having better control over data, having the ability to attest to where data resides and who can access to it in a very, very automatic and scalable way can really make a huge business impact for the organization.
Yeah. So Rich, to the practitioners in the room, what do you recommend from a CISO perspective to make that a successful practice? How do we help enable the business by using DPSM?
Listen, every organization is unique, so you need to understand the culture of the organization. But bringing forth truth through data is one of the best change agents that you can present. Almost any organization is willing to move when they understand the truth of the data. So, like you said, how do you operationalize this? I mean, imagine if you could provide by business unit a view on how much data they have. And then you figure out a taxonomy of there's going to be a cost associated with protecting that data. And then you put governance into place saying use of that data, you have to have the following controls. So I would encourage all practitioners when you're thinking about this, it's not about telling them thou shalt do this. It's about figuring out how to integrate the process and the controls and the visibility and the consequential governance as part of your data management program.
So Rich, when we talk a lot, you talk about quick wins and things to knock out quickly. What would you recommend are the first 3 triage steps to implement this and get some quick wins on the board?
First and foremost, obviously, have a technology deployed, right, and properly. The second is to understand what data and what reporting is available. And then the third, spend time understanding which groups in the organization need to know or want to know about this information, and tell them it's coming, give them a preview, give them time to understand and digest, and then make sure there's a consequence model associated with it from a governance standpoint whenever you begin to roll out and operationalize it.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you both very much. Very informative conversation.
Thank you.